All right, here we are, June 24th, 2023. We're at the Nashville Wood Sawmill here with William, emceeing with his Wood-Mizer hat on. Take it away, William.
And you know what? I have my Wood-Mizer mug as well.
Oh, wow.
So I'm really repping the Wood-Mizer brand at the moment.
Yep.
And in case you're wondering, we are actually, what are we called? What is it?
What
is the title?
It's an official Wood-Mizer demonstration.
This is an official Wood-Mizer.
So if you buy a saw, I get like $2.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how that works. So, well, thanks for coming out. A few of you have been more than once, which is pretty awesome. But we're just going to talk about the sawmill, kind of get you a little bit of an experience of what it's like cutting into a fresh walnut log. And there's nothing like it. It's pretty awesome. So I'll give just kind of a brief history of the company, and then we'll talk a little bit about what we do, why we do, and we'll get into it, and y'all have an opportunity to ask questions once we cut in, because there's lots of things to take note of and ask questions about. We'll do our best to explain whatever we know, which is a pretty good amount. He's been doing this for a long time. So this company, Natural Wood, started about 2006, I think is when he bought the first mill, which is not this mill. It was a cook sawmill, which is also a pretty decent company. They're based in Alabama. But you had just bought this house a few years prior, and you said you were working on a way to pay off the mortgage a little quicker. And he always loved woodworking. Shop was your favorite class in high school,
Yep,
right?
that's the only reason I got through high school.
That's
Yep.
right, shop class. So he got to looking into wood sawmills, and he bought one and kind of took off from there. So it was something that Paul used to do with his dad, and it was kind of a bonding thing that they would do. And so he got the sawmill, they started cutting into things, and they needed to do a half-mile of fence around the property. And he was getting these logs that were like nice walnut and cherry, and he was just throwing them on the fence, you know, not knowing kind of what he had in there. And so you had somebody come stop by, right, that told you were doing all this wrong. It was Tom Morrison, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of people were telling me all the mistakes you make. So when you actually go to do something, everyone will tell you what you're doing wrong. And so, yeah, that's not how you do it. Oh, that's all wrong. And so I would just amend my ways, and I finally learned how to saw the wood.
Right. So a guy named Tom Morrison came in here, and he was just like a wealth of knowledge, and he was a fantastic inventor, and he would make all these little adjustments to the mill and everything so things would run smoothly. And he kind of got you going on the right track, I think.
Yep.
And so he ran the mill from 2006 to 2016, and then Paul's father started declining in health, and so he sort of sold the mill, kind of let the business sit for a while, and reprioritized there. And then I came around in when would this have been? 2019, I think. And 2020 we started talking, and I was saying, hey, you know, I see all this wood sitting around here. If you ever want to get another sawmill, let me know, because I would love to run that. So we talked about it a little bit, and we decided, you know what, let's go for it. So we ordered this mill February 2022, and it came in March of this year, 2023. So we waited for a nice long time. The Lord was teaching us patience, and we called him every week. You know, I was like, hey, do you have an update? And they'd be like, no, we don't have anything. Or at one point we said, do you have an update? And they're like, yes, it's going to take 6 months longer to get here than we told you originally. And so there's a lot of up and down through that. And then all of a sudden I called them. I said, hey, do you have an update? They said no. And they called me the next day and said, oh, it'll be here Thursday. And so I was like, great, fantastic. So we got it in, and it has been awesome. It has been an absolute joy to run. It takes a long time to get everything set up because it's a big piece of equipment, so you got to kind of fine tune. There's about 1,000 micro adjustments on there, so you got to fine tune all of those and get it all running smoothly. But it has been amazing. It's an electric sawmill, which the last one you had was diesel. Was it diesel or
gas?
Gas. So it was a gas mill, so it was a lot louder. You know, totally different process really, because with the engine you got to, you know, change the oil and replace your filters and everything. With this, you just press the start button and go, and it's kind of awesome. Well, after you dug a trench, we did dig a trench from the house all the way over to here, and that's where you see the electrical coming in. But it's awesome, awesome. And we had some challenges with that, like what do we do with this cord that's hanging down? You know, we have 50 feet of cord, where do we put that? So we went through a couple different thought processes on that, and then just sort of came up with this little cable system and put some carabiners up there, and it works great. It slides out and in just fine, doesn't give me really any problems. So we were able to kind of get this thing rolling, new experience, but it has been awesome, really awesome. And you'll get to see it cut. It's got a lot of power on these electric mills.
And I'll just say a little bit about William. So William is very artistic. He's an artist, and he does a lot of sketches, a lot of paintings, a lot of just various kinds of art. And that's sort of had always been the theme here, was art being artistic. So we're not going to do like commodity wood here. We're not going to cut a lot of wood because it's a residential property. We don't have much room, but we can take very unique and individualistic type logs, like logs that are bent, logs that have furrows on them, logs that would be thrown away ordinarily. And William can see things in the wood that most people like me wouldn't see because he has that artistic mindset. And so what we do is we cut the logs and we stack everything by flitch. And I'll show you a flitch out there. It's each log, yeah, I'll turn the camera and show you that flitch. Each log is stored and dried together. So if you're building a table and you want all the wood to match, and there are people out there that are like that. They don't want to go to a lumber yard and buy off of a pallet where there's 20 different trees put on that pallet of, say, walnut or cherry. They want it all to match. And so we're a bit snobby and a bit different that way. And so, but I wanted to introduce William and his artistic talent and say that is really adding a lot of value to the efforts here because he has that gifting and he's applying that, and it's going very well so far. But go ahead.
Well, thanks. So along those lines, we are a slab mill. So, you'll see these mills, they do dimensional stuff. They'll crank out 2x4s and everything. That's not really the reason why it got started. It was an artistic thing. You wanted to kind of bring, well, first it was just kind of a hobby, like what can I do with this, and then it turned into every log, every piece is unique, and what can you do with that? How special can that become? What kind of piece of furniture can that be? And so every cut you make, you'll see something in a log and say, wow, like that grain is phenomenal. I could see that on my coffee table, or just like accent pieces, anything. So it's a very artistic process, and it's a very unique process. Every board, every log, you're going to see this log is the same tree that we cut last week, and it'll be completely different. So even from the same tree, you'll get, all these different types of boards that turn out beautiful, and it's really up to whoever's looking at it to come up with what is your vision for your project. How can you make the most use out of the beautiful wood? And the way that I like to do it, I let the wood do most of the work. I let God do that because I don't, I'm not qualified. So I let the wood be pretty, and then I just do simple legs, something like that, because there's a lot of people out there that do fantastic woodwork where they're chopping things up, and that's amazing. This is sort of a different process. You want the wood to be the focus. So we let these big slabs have their beauty, and we just sort of help it out a little bit and just kind of go alongside it. So, do you want to go ahead and start cutting?
Yeah.
Why don't we go for it?
You want people to stand in here?
So that side of the mill is the outfeed side. So you don't really want to be on that side because it'll be a little bit dustier. So if y'all want to go, you can stay in here if you'd like. But it is pretty cool to watch it from this side over here. So we'll make a few cuts and then
the sun.
Open the floor to questions, and
I can move the chair over
really,
there.
really awesome. So let's get ready. And if you need earplugs, we have them.
It's not really that loud.
It's not super loud.
Yeah, especially since you don't have a gas engine.
That's right. Yeah. That's why. Hey, I'm gonna get you to help me move these boards. The boards when I cut them. Okay.
Oh, thanks, Jonathan.
It's like 100 pounds.
He's got some in. Okay. Debbie?
Yeah.
You want some? Thank you,
So when you cut when you cut, you'll see we've got one side propped up. Pretty much every log is going to be tapered a little bit, so one side will be smaller. And really, you want to cut the log so that you're cutting where the top of the tree, the bark, is parallel to the bed. So that's why I kind of raise it up. That'll get you the most material out of the tree that way. And when you're going with the shape of the tree, the wood is going to have less of a tendency to warp. When you're cutting against how that tree was growing, you'll see the trees have a memory. There's a lot of tension, and so they want to twist on you. So for this tree, it's growing pretty straight, which is good for twisting. If it's a twisty tree, you want to cut it thicker to kind of negate that twist after the fact. If it's a nice straight tree, we can cut it a little thinner. I'm going to be cutting these to 2 1/4 inches thick, and that's really because the size of this log. You can get a really nice tabletop, countertop, something, and you want that to have some thickness to it. So, and you'll see, I'll say this before I cut, there's some cracks and things on this log. There's a little bit of rot down here at the bottom. I've oriented it so that the rot goes this way or this way. If it goes this way, I'm going to hit it on every single piece. So I've rotated it so I only hit that rot in the center where that wedge is going to be. And the wedge, a lot of the time, we won't use some of it, and so there's just a more likely chance that we'll be able to kind of get around that rot. But when we open it up, try not to think of cracks or holes or a little bit of rot as defects. Try to think of it as character. It's just an extra bit of character on that piece of wood. So we'll cut the top off of here, and then we'll ask questions, and then we'll do a couple more cuts and more questions. Just ask them as they come. I think I'm cutting to 29 is what we're going to do. Hey, what's going on, Brian? I'll cut to 28. 28. All right. And I do have a water tank on here, and it just keeps my blade lubricated and keeps it from getting hot. And we put a little bit of soap in the water, nothing fancy. All right, let's do it. I gotta turn the switch. That's an important step. Turn your power on. Alright, so I'm going to slide the mill back, and then y'all can come take a look at this piece. I'll get my brush out. Sorry.
No, you're fine.
Pretty sweet. So you can see that heartwood starting to come through.
What do you call the white part?
The white is sapwood. Sapwood is what it's called. So you can see the heartwood's coming through. Pretty nice, and that's the money maker right there, is the heartwood. Sapwood's really nice, but it's a nice color contrast, but it is the first thing that'll rot. So a lot of people don't want to mess with sapwood. I think it's a really beautiful contrast. If you can get a piece with healthy sapwood and put a finish on it, it looks awesome. But this is really the meat of the tree right there. So, oh, thanks. So we'll do this called water popping. And I won't do the whole thing on this one. I'll do it on the next ones. But it kind of brings out the color of that piece and what it would be like with a clear coat finish. So you can see kind of when it gets cut, it's a little bit more of a lighter, well, it's still a dark brown, but it's kind of a grayish brown. As it sits, it'll turn into this rich, almost purpley brown color. So the color really comes out kind of the longer it sits, especially in log form. If it sits for years as a log, you cut into that dark, rich, brown, purple, walnut color is gonna really jump out at you. This is a very fresh tree. It was only cut down a few weeks ago, so it's fresh, which is good. There's kind of some benefits to both. An older log, the sapwood's probably gonna be gone, and you're only gonna have heartwood. With these newer logs, you can kind of keep this sapwood. So, any questions?
What type of tree is this?
This is a walnut.
Okay.
American black walnut.
Is this
American
like a
black walnut?
Yeah.
American black walnut.
Yes.
From around here.
Yeah. Yeah, it grows very fast here.
Is that
Yes.
from the saw blade?
Yeah, these tiny lines are from the blade. There may be a tooth that's a little low or something, but with this, it's not deep, and so you just run it. You can sand it out, plane it out, whatever you want to do. And you'll see these if it gets real bad. I know, like I gotta change my blade pretty quick.
How long do the blades typically
Yeah,
last?
absolutely.
It varies. Depends if you hit a rock or a nail. And there's a lot of grit in the logs,
Yeah.
and you don't really know. Like there could be a lot. Like, if this was in a sandy area and that wind was blowing the sand against the bark, you can get a dull blade really quickly. You don't even know why it happened. Or you can hit bullets and nails and screws.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah, but sometimes you have a blade that just lasts and lasts and lasts. And,
If
you
you're
know.
cutting cedar, you can cut for weeks on the same blade and don't even have to resharpen it. It's awesome. Cedar is super soft. Pine's got a lot of pitch though.
Yeah.
Kind of gums up your blade. But these harder woods, you want to kind of monitor how it's cutting, and you can. We'll sharpen them a little bit, but there's really nothing like a fresh blade out of the box. It'll cut right through pretty much anything. It's pretty sweet.
Machines that auto drive.
Yes. So this machine, and really I think any Wood-Mizer mill, you can order a power feed, and it gets on the electric ones. You have to wire it into this box. It's a really long, confusing process, but it does move the mill automatically. We actually got it and put it on, and it was kind of a nightmare for us to set up. The instructions weren't super clear, but we ended up taking it off because when you're cutting in manually, you can feel where there's not. You can feel where the wood is kind of giving you a little bit of pushback, and you want to slow your cut down. With an automatic one, it's not feeling that the same way that I am. And you know, when it's leveled up, it's not very hard to push. It's pretty easy to push. And so I I'll probably go a little slower. I didn't know this knot is here, now I know. But I can feel it with the blade. You can feel it cuts. It's a little tougher to get through, so I'll just slow it down a little bit as I'm cutting, and I'll speed up when it's easy. And it allows me to kind of do what the log needs me to do a little bit easier than an automatic one does, because it'll just run all the way through, and if you don't slow down, you'll get this big lump right over the hard spots. And so we generally try to avoid those. There's some types of tree, like an oak or an osage, that it's so hard, sometimes I just can't avoid those lumps. It's just going to happen, and no matter how slow I go, the blade will wave a little bit. But on a walnut, you can generally slow it down and just go at the pace that it eats at. Don't try to force it through, just kind of let it eat. and it'll cut a pretty nice, pretty flat surface on there.
All right, let's cut it again.
All right, so I'm gonna make 2 cuts here, and then we will take them off and kind of look in it, and then y'all can ask more questions.
So we need everyone over here
Or inside.
or inside. If you want to sit down or you want to get out of the sun, go in behind William there.
Probably do it for top one, but I'll just have to go. All right, that was 28. Right? Yes. So I'm cutting these to 2 1/4 inch. So this is the only thing I've run into with this system is it'll get caught on that when I go really high. I have to get above like 25 inches up to do that, so that's one kink that we're currently working on. 25 3/4, which means I need to go 23 and a half. All right, here we go. change my sawdust bucket on the last cut. And I started putting my dust back up top of here, but no, you don't have to put this on the little foot. Actually, yeah, do. It's fine. You can set it there because we're gonna put another one here. Then we'll get these. Yeah, it kind of has to go one side at a time. It gets stuck when you go. Yeah, I got a little wave on that knot. That's all right. All right.
More hard the deeper you get, huh?
Yep. So, I probably need to go ahead and change this blade. I can see it's starting to give me a little wave in here. So I'll change that blade. No, I won't make y'all watch that. But
Learning something's learning something.
that's right. Get all that dust.
So I noticed you catch all the sawdust. What all do you repurpose that for, or do you?
Yeah, a little bit. It's
for the
good for
garden.
what? Raspberries, blackberries,
It's good for
right?
anything in the rubus family, which is a blackberry or raspberry. It'll kill the weeds, but it won't affect the plant.
Okay.
So I put it around the raspberries. Yeah.
Particularly walnut.
Yep, particularly, yeah. It has a chemical in it called juglone, which is used as a dewormer by people. You can buy it on Amazon.
You eat a handful of sawdust
Well,
to get rid of the worms.
I don't recommend that, but I don't really know about it. But they use it medicinally, and they use it in the garden. Yeah. So yeah, there's purposes for everything. Like the Osage orange sawdust is yellow, and it's good for dyeing clothing.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
It's a really bright sawdust.
Yeah. Yep. It's right.
Is that the hardest wood you work on? Is the Osage?
Yeah, that's the hardest wood in North America. Yep. And you can bury it underground for 100 years. It'll never rot.
Wow.
Yeah.
What makes it? Is it like carbon levels or chemicals? What makes it not rot?
It seems to have a lot of silica in it, but I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. It's just it's what the Osage Indians made their bows out of, and it's very flexible and very good for like bows as in archery bows. Yeah. Yep.
So do you get their name from the tree, or does the tree get the name from the?
I don't know, but it's a formidable tree. It has big thorns, and in the Civil War they had to route the troops around the Osage orange groves because they're just impenetrable. It's wood with a vengeance. It's amazing.
All right.
How much? I think you mentioned this in the past, but the amount of trees that come out of the Nashville or the Tennessee area, out of Tennessee.
Yeah, it's one of the major exports, if not the major export in Tennessee. And in Nashville, when they clear cut the trees here in the 1890s, they said it was the best hardwood in the world. And there's a sign up at Radnor Lake to that effect. And if you look at the growth rings on this tree, it's huge. They're huge. They're quite big. They're probably like 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch, and we see that a lot because in Nashville, we're far enough south the trees grow really quickly, but we're far enough north that the seeds and the nuts will freeze and go through a process called stratification, where they nuts won't sprout unless they freeze. So we're far enough north to have these beautiful nut trees, and it's sort of a perfect storm for making furniture and growing hardwood. So we get a lot of really great walnut, hickory, and oak trees here in Nashville, and pecan, which is in the hickory family.
What kind of tree is it?
That's an American black walnut. Yep.
Are there some big tree farms in Tennessee?
Do we have tree farms?
Are there some of the bigger
I don't know. I don't see a lot of tree farming going on, but it wouldn't hurt to plant a few of these walnuts. And it's real easy to plant. All you do is you take the walnut and bury it in the ground, and it'll grow a tree. I did it experimentally, and I grew some very big walnut trees. They're about 30 feet tall in about 4 years, maybe.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they grow really quickly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's probably what got me started gardening. There's an old saying that's like the best time to grow like a fruit tree is 20 years ago, because then you'd have the fruit.
Yeah.
And the second best time is right now.
Yeah, right
Always
now.
Get it started.
Yeah, that's right. What good advice. Yeah. So yeah, we need, these trees grow like crazy, and they're beautiful, and they really like it here in Tennessee. Yeah.
Any questions?
So you You mentioned defects as character. There's no character in this.
Yeah. Now, when we get down to that knot right there, we'll get some character.
This is character right here. These knots.
Yeah.
Some people really do not want knots on their projects.
But the advantage of that is that it has a lower market value.
Yeah.
So if you want it all clear, like to the left here, this would be called clear. You're going to pay like 2 or 3 times the price of something with knots and what we call character or defects. And but it makes for very boring furniture, honestly.
If you cut it to 2 1/4,
Yes.
dried, what's it dried?
Dried and plain.
Would that be 1/7?
It'll be about 2 1/8 when it's dry, and then you'll plane it down to 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Depending on how
long does it take
aggressive.
to dry it?
It'd probably take 2 years. They say an inch a year, but honestly, over the summer, if you're in a well-ventilated area, this wood can dry in a year and over the summer. It's the heat that dries the wood, and we like to dry it very slowly because you get the less, it's the best way to dry it is slowly.
Versus kiln.
Yeah, if you put it in the kiln, you're going to mute the colors. So when you buy commercial walnut, this light-colored sapwood here will turn brown, and they steam it so that it's all brown. But you end up with a lighter color brown and a darker color white, and it's just not as artistic in my opinion. But it's always a beauty in the eye of the beholder situation. Some people like the contrast, some don't like it. And if you're building production cabinets, you need to get kiln dried wood. But if you're doing one-off pieces of art, then you can use air-dried wood and use it to great advantage.
Yeah, I was gonna say that they're very different in terms of workability. Kiln dried is like you can pretty much go hit the ground running, do whatever you need to do with it. Air dried, trees are living things, right? So they kind of want to twist and turn and turn. I caught myself saying it. We just did our church's VBS this year. That was the theme. Anyway, but they want to kind of move, and with the air dried piece, you have to kind of understand that there's a possibility of that happening once you're done with your project.
So the wood will expand and contract on the width. So on this axis here, it'll expand and contract. The lengthwise, it won't expand and contract. So when you bind the wood, if you, like say you were to put pegs in, you wouldn't want to put a peg here and here because it would split apart. You'd put a sliding mortise or or pin it on one side and let it slide